which I know is a term that everybody's heard before, and it can be somewhat overused. But I'll go in today a little bit about what it is and how it can help your business, and I guess some of the key areas you need to think about, and maybe how things are changing a little bit with Google and some of the other search engines with their algorithms, and what matters in search the most today, and how that's changed over time. A little housekeeping real quick. The previous webinars are all available for replay. They have been recorded and are on my zimrock.com site. You can go to zimrock.com, zimrock.com, and under the About Us menu bar, there's a webinars section, and you can choose that, and that'll also be for future webinars. To register will be there as well. So feel free to go out there and replay any of the past webinars we did on Facebook and mobile and a few others. And if you've attended some of those, I appreciate that as well. So today we're going to talk about basically kind of what is SEO and why is it important. So in the beginning of all of my webinars, I like to kind of just lay down some what it is, so we're on the same page, and then maybe why it's important. So let me go through a few of those quick before we jump into the main content. But SEO is obviously the term kind of speaks for itself, search engine optimization. And it's just a method or a way to improve your visibility in the search engine's eyes for your website, or it could be for something else. It could be for a video or other things as well. But it's the idea to have it show up in the organic or natural search areas. And I'll show you where that is and what that means in a second. But when I talk about organic or natural, it's anything that's not in the paid advertising category. So SEO are things that we'll be optimizing towards, that will show up higher in the search engine, but in the specific areas where, again, the natural or organic spaces work. And this is a quick show of that. And this is a kind of an older Google-looking screen, but here's the typical is the top couple, and sometimes it's up to 3, and then the far right column, now typically below the map, if it's a local search, will be your paid advertising. And paid advertising, like I said, can be anywhere from 3 on the top to probably anywhere from 4 to 7 or 4 to 10 on the right side, depending. The organic results are right below the top advertising components, and they also, depending if it's a local search, can also be blended in with what you've seen some now as the Google Maps or Google Places listings, where you'll see some pins, and they'll be on the map on the top right that correlate with those pins. So it's important to see, just know the layout of a Google search page, from a perspective of the viewer, and as we go forward. So, talking about SEO in general, and we term it also inbound marketing, and sometimes I use the term permissive marketing, because it's really important, because when someone's searching for somebody and they're actually putting in a term, they're actually looking for something and are interested in it at that moment. So we are not interrupting them or doing any kind of outbound marketing that you might see traditionally with TV, radio, print, or things like that we might consider interruptive, because it's something that we didn't really ask for. When you're watching TV and a commercial comes on, we don't necessarily want to see that commercial, but we just have to, or we obviously can fast forward through a DVR and things like that. But traditionally, when you look at the paper, there's ads, and when you're looking at magazines or listen to the radio, you're going to hear ads, and that's just the way it is. They try to hit a broader audience and try to, obviously trickle that down to where someone might catch the right person at the right time and be interested. But when it comes to SEO or search marketing, someone's actually looking for you at that moment. So the idea is that we're going to be building potential trust and authority with that searcher, depending on where we show up and what our message is. So that's basically the difference between inbound marketing versus outbound marketing, or what I call permissive-based marketing versus interruptive marketing. And obviously, we much prefer inbound marketing, because it is the ability to get that, what some people might call a warm lead, or a prospect who's actually looking for your services when they're looking. A few misconceptions just in general about SEO. First, that it's free marketing. This is true and not true. The reality is that it is free marketing from a standpoint where someone goes to the organic listings, and if it just shows up and they click on it, that didn't cost you anything. It takes them right to your site. But the idea that it does take time energy, effort, and potentially money to to create content and do the things that you need to do to move yourself up in the rank, become an authority site in those in your specific area for your product or service. So there is investment. It isn't always money, but there is potentially money investment as well. But it's not technically free. 15 years ago, someone could throw up a website, maybe stuff a few keywords on there, and all of a sudden they got some rank, and therefore it just showed up, and hey, that was free. But the internet obviously has changed dramatically. There's a lot more players or a lot more clutter out there. So you have to be able to kind of navigate through the clutter and understand how it works, why it works the way it does, and be able to navigate through that. So um, it's real important to do that. Another one says, some people say, well, SEO just doesn't work anymore. And in a sense, that's probably sort of true in the sense that if you just, like I said, you have, someone just throw you up a quick website, or you use a quick website builder and all of a sudden you got a presence. Yes, people can find you if you point them there, but you're not going to get search rank by basically just throwing up a website. It just doesn't work unless it's for such an obscure niche that you might be the only one out there and nobody's searching on it. But the reality is it that it absolutely does work. It just does take a little bit of effort. The other idea is that SEO is some sort of black magic or voodoo, and no one knows how it works and that sort of thing. Again, not true. Now, Google doesn't really share, or Yahoo or Bing doesn't really share what their algorithms are and exactly what they rank for, but we know with working with specific methodologies and specific tactics, we know we can rank for certain keywords, and we know how difficult it's going to be and how long it might take potentially. There's some variances in all those things, but it is something that we know how to do and can make it work, and we can also show you how to do that as well. And the next one is, it's rocket science. It's so complicated and so difficult. And the reality is, no, it's not. There are some specific things you can do, but it does take consistency. It does take effort. Again, like we talked about the first example. And the last one says SEO is illegal. It absolutely is not, and nothing is illegal. There are terms of service guidelines within the search engines that we need to adhere to. And you've probably heard terms like black hat tactics or things like that. And those do exist. There are things that truly violate a term of service from Google, and you can get penalized for that from a search engine. So is it really illegal? From a law perspective, of course not. But would it violate a search engine and cost you? That's potentially true. That is true. But it is absolutely white hat and legal if done correctly, and it'll be very sticky when it comes down to doing it right. And what I mean by sticky is, if you do the work and find yourself to the top of the search engines, you're going to find that you end up staying there with some consistent work on that. But you'll get that authority, and once the search volume starts to come in, it actually helps even exponentially with your stickiness, because now Google thinks you're the site that people are after, and it works that way. So it is important, to do the right things, get there in the right way, and you will stay there much longer. So the reality basically is SEO is a legitimate marketing strategy, and it is absolutely practiced by all the companies and the most successful companies in the world. If you talk to pretty much, or go do a search on pretty much any term, and you look at the top 10 or 12 that show up on the first page, for instance, each one of those is likely using some heavy internal SEO staff to work with their websites, or they're using probably an external firm to help them with that. So it happens every day for and by everybody. So SEO truly is an absolute reality when it comes to that perspective. So I always like to throw in the kind of the who cares slide in each one of my presentations and why this is important. And there's no secret. Obviously, we all use the internet. We all use search. So we know that there's a lot of people on the internet. There's a lot of people online and a lot of people searching every day. Basically, most people with some sort of experience that they're going to do on the internet, 93% of everybody start with a search. They want to find something. They go to one of their favorite search engine, and they put that in there. And Google happens to be the largest of the big three. They garner, depending on what you look at, garner anywhere between 60 and I've heard even as high as 80% sometimes of the search market. I know Bing, since they've sort of joined forces with Yahoo a little bit, have gained a little bit of market share there, but Google certainly still is the big boy on the block, and obviously with their focus on new things like Google Plus and other social areas, they're going to continue to stay there, certainly. But the main idea there, it is such a gigantic search audience out there. Capturing a portion or a very small piece of that can be very, very effective and successful. More who cares? Basically, uh, this is a big one too when it comes to the organic or natural listings, as I mentioned before. About 3/4 of the people will choose an organic listing over a paid listing, mostly because they figure, well, if someone's buying their way to page one, they could be, maybe they don't always trust advertisers. They might be deceptive in their advertising or something like that. So they figure if someone's in the organic area, they've, been around, they've, put content, it's other people are clicking on it because they want to see it, so therefore they have some perceived authority in what they're doing, and it's usually typically true. There are things that are just inherently better about an organic list or the organic or natural area of the web page. When people actually buy stuff, um, 2/3 of them actually will do some sort of search before when they make that purchase. So it's again really important that the buying population is out there searching on it, and they'll click an organic or a natural search area before they make an actual purchase. And obviously the click-through rate, therefore, is much higher than even PPC. Now, I'm not discounting PPC or pay-per-click as a viable option for search, or I should say, search marketing, because people do click on them, and there's still, as we saw, a very gigantic audience out there. So being on page one for, even if you're only going to get part of the clicks, is still a good click from a very large audience. Maybe a smaller portion, but it still can be a very large portion of that. So um, very important. So kind of net, you see where I'm going with this. High rankings in search engines are very, very valuable. It's just like I said, you can't mistake the largest audience that's potentially out there, and because of their searching on specific terms that might fit your product or service, they're actually looking for somebody. And we'll talk a little bit about the difference between maybe a buy keyword versus a research keyword a little bit later, but that's, we'll get into the search market themselves. Okay, so quickly, basically, how valuable is a search? And um, I'll do a quick example here. It's a little extreme, but just to make a point, we look at a keyword phrase like auto insurance. Obviously, when you watch TV and everything else, we are bludgeoned with auto insurance ads constantly on TV. But why is that? Because it's profitable. So obviously you're very, very active in marketing and marketing techniques. So when it comes to the internet, it's no different. We take a look at the search. This is right straight from Google. This tells us basically how many searches per month are actually out there. And if you noticed on the auto insurance term in here, it's got some brackets around it. That means that it's an exact phrase match, meaning someone's typing in exactly this phrase and only this phrase. So if someone typed in auto insurance in a city or auto insurance something else, it would potentially show up in a phrase match or a broad match, but that's not included in this one. So the searches can be actually much higher than this when you get outside the exact match. So in this case, 110,000 searches per month on the exact match side. And what that approximate CPC number is, says that basically that is roughly the average cost of a cost per click campaign if you wanted to do PPC advertising for this keyword. So that means that people are out there, probably the Geicos of the world and all the Progressive and all the big players are out there bidding on these keywords in the pay-per-click area, and the highest bidder gets a higher spot typically on the ad area. But as you can see, if it cost them $63 per click every time someone clicked on it, that's an enormous number. That's what the companies are basically saying. That's what that click is worth to us. So if someone says that's a value that's worth to us, therefore that means it's profitable. So therefore the market must be enormous. So if you work the math on that, the search volume of 110,000 searches per month, obviously times every click of that, which is $66. I mean, this is almost $7 million in value per month that this keyword's worth on the internet. One keyword. So you can obviously see what this could be worth. And let's break it down even further, and let's look at the clicking from an organic perspective. So they've now told us what this keyword's worth from the paid area. Now, if we consider that this same keyword is worth the same value, but in the organic or natural area, we can look at Google and say, okay, of the first page, how many people are clicking on position 1, 2, 3, 4, that sort of thing. And ranked number one, almost 40 or over 40% of the clicks happen on the first slot. And if you look at the first 5 positions, basically it's just short of 80% of all the clicks happen in the first 5 spots. So it's very important to be number one, but it's also very important just to be in the top 5 to get any kind of market share of those clicks. What most people are doing these days is there's a few that go to a page 2 or page 3. It's pretty rare, but most people, if they don't get what they want or don't find the search that they're after, they'll actually change the search criteria, the search term in the Google, search itself before they'll actually go to a page 2. So it's important to be on page 1 and be in those first few positions if you want to garner at least a good line share of those clicks. So if we take this idea, now talking about the natural organic area, using again the same search volume and what the cost per click is, 42%, if you were in number one spot, for instance, is worth almost $3 million per month to whoever that would be. Now, again, I've used in a very extreme case of auto insurance, cost per click can be as low as 50 cents a click and on some, lower competitive words. But this just gives you an idea of if you do get to the top spots in organic or SEO on a word that does have some value, could be competitive, may take some time to get there, but if you do, the value can be extremely high on what that's worth. So really important, from the value of SEO, and everything I'm driving towards here is that SEO is extremely important, extremely viable. Just quickly, some benefits of SEO overall, and most of these are fairly obvious in what they do. They boost website traffic. There's no question. Basically, the more you become an authority and the more clicks you get on your website, it even, like I said, it even kind of snowballs and becomes larger because Google gives you more and more authority because people are actually clicking on your site, potentially staying on your site, and they're saying, okay, this must be a valuable site for that person, or my searcher, they were looking for something, they found it, and it looks like it's the right thing. So Google will give you, again, more and more rank love, for those kinds of things as your traffic goes up. So it can really help to boost traffic. Increase visibility among target audience. That goes without saying. Um, Actually, the next 2 are kind of other, and it builds relationships and influence, meaning that, as I mentioned before, when people see you in the organic or natural area, you get a perceived authority because you have to have been around, probably, have to have the right content, delivering the right information to the searcher. And when you get all that, it builds that visibility, it builds the relationship, it builds the influence. That's what you're trying to do. And the more you do that, Google gives you what's known as a higher page rank, for instance, and the more page rank you have, the higher your rank is in the search. And what's even more important about that is Google will start to give you keywords that maybe you didn't even optimize towards that are just similar, and they call that latent semantic indexing, which are LSI. And that term means nothing more than if this word is like auto insurance, and then there might be one called auto insurance tips or car insurance or vehicle insurance, and maybe you don't have those actually optimized on your website, but Google will say, okay, well, if people are thinking you're the right person for auto insurance, they'll start giving you some higher rank for car insurance or vehicle insurance at the same time. So again, as you increase your billing relationship, your conversions will also go up. You get more subscribers, and obviously will just translate into sales. A typical, sales funnel, if it says I have to have, of every 10 good leads that I get, I close 2 of them, and it takes me 50, cold leads to get to 10 warm leads. That means I have to get 50 cold leads to get every 2 customers. In how you approach SEO, and is the search volume there? Can I win for that? And that then again turns into increased sales and new customers. Little typo there, meant to be a closed parentheses on that. And then the results, they're very measurable. We have analytics and analytic tools that we can measure our success. We can not only just see how many hits or clicks we're getting, we can see what pages they're visiting, how long they're staying on pages, where those actual searches are coming from, which keywords they use to get to our search. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal now, so we can do a lot more tweaking to maximize towards specific keywords. If we see we're getting a lot of hits from a very good keyword that maybe we haven't optimized towards, we can tweak the site to optimize towards that keyword and get even more clicks or even higher. And my apologies for the phone ringing. Um, But so it's really important that we measure and look at the results constantly, so you can make better decisions about your website and your ongoing SEO for what content you create and for what you optimize towards. The last one is the big boys. In this case, they can't outbid you. I mean, the bottom line is, can they do a lot? Can they create a lot of content and have a lot of people working for them? Absolutely. But from a pure dollars, like cost per click, they just can't outbid you. So you can compete with some effort against even the bigger players. So what's the downsides of SEO? Everything we've been talking about sounds great. It's terrific, it's valuable, all those things. But the reality is that it does take time. Um, the way I always talk to my clients and prospects is that if we want to get to page one for a specific term, we'll look at the competitive nature of it to see maybe how viable or how quickly we can get there. But the reality is to get to page one, you've got to knock somebody off of page one. So what I mean by that is that basically you have to be, something better than they are. You have to have better content, more frequent content, better optimization, all the different things that you do and that we can do. It has to be better than the guy that you're jumping over. And likely a lot of those guys that are on page one, they're doing stuff. They're not just sitting around. So they are creating content. They're creating social signals. They're doing all the things that you need to do. So it's very competitive. But the good news is we also, again, have tools that allow us to look at the competitive nature of the competitors to see how stiff that competition is, and is it, are we reasonably going to go ahead and overtake them in a reasonable amount of time. So there's, again, back to it's not this black art and it's not this crazy stuff. It's very logical and it's very methodical the way we approach it and how you can win. It is somewhat out of our control. Google is constantly, not just Google, but the other search engines as well, are constantly tweaking their algorithms. So we might be going in kind of one direction, they may switch something, and then we have to kind of be nimble and switch to another one. But that's the whole point of having people that are in the industry and understand it, that they actually do stay on top of the changes and the different algorithms that are going on all the time. So there are some things that that can be beyond our control, but we can be very close and very reactive to them, so we know what to do when something switches. We can switch with it. It does require consistent effort. As I mentioned earlier, you can't. It's not a set and forget. That's kind of a really old mentality. It said you throw up a website 10 years ago and you stuffed it with some keywords, and you probably got some rank for it because the competition was low, and it stuck for a while, and you got clicks, and you thought it was great. It truly is. SEO's become, I call it, kind of the journey, not the destination. It's not something you just do. Like I said, you don't set it and forget it. You don't do one thing and stop. You kind of have to stay at it, and that's even if simple things like just blogging, putting new information out there that's valuable to your uh, industry, your prospects, your client base, things like that. And you can do other things. Like I said, the social media pieces are all coming big into play as well, and that does affect SEO. So there's a lot of things you can do, but it does take a consistent effort. And certainly there's no guarantees with SEO um, in what you do. If you do it right, you can predict basically how you're going to end up and where you're going to be. But there is no 100%. We do this and you're going to end up here. It just doesn't work that way. But like I said, with consistent methodology and the right methodology, you can find your way there. So again, that was a lot of preamble, and I want to jump into the heart of this. But basically, what we're here for is how can SEO work for your business. Hopefully now you've seen a reason to do SEO for your business. It makes sense to do that. Um, and move forward with this, for your different web properties. It doesn't always have to be a website. It can be websites, it can be mobile properties, it can be Facebook pages, etc. But the idea being that you're trying to do something that's going to show up in search engines, become visible. And you'll notice too, over your left, I'll jump there's a shared files area. There's a couple of documents I threw out there that just could help you. Basically, one of them is, it says it's an SEO on-page primer, and feel free to download those. And basically, it's kind of a 10-page, and this is when I say on-page, meaning this is the stuff that you do on your website, not the stuff that you do off-page, meaning like it's not press releases, it's not video and articles and things that you might syndicate on the internet to get more search and traffic and rank and things like that. But these are things you do on your page, and you'll probably recognize some of them. You've probably seen lists before like this. And then there's another one I just put. It says important questions to ask about SEO, basically, and some things that you just need to be aware of when it comes to SEO. So feel free to download those and use them, and certainly ask questions about them later if you have any. So let's jump into this now. So basically, we're going to talk about, I say, the 7 secrets, everything you should know. They're not really secrets. The reality is these are just 7 things that businesses should know of what's important today and maybe how to maximize those for their own websites. uh, Number one, which is incredibly important, and it's key to know that it's done. It has to be done correctly. This is not the old ways. It's all about the keywords, and it is. It's making sure you're telling the search engines what your website is about or the traffic you're trying to get. They need to know that. And it is done through keywords, but not in the traditional or old sense where people thought, okay, I'll stuff they call meta tags, which is maybe titles and descriptions and things like that. I'll stuff those full of keywords, and then I'll stuff a page or two on my website full of these keywords, and they'll just love me for it. It's not that way. It's about the content you create around these keywords. So it's really important to know the difference between that. When I say it's all about the keywords, it's not just making sure that those keywords are showing up on your page somewhere, but it's how they're showing up. So knowing your keyword targets is your first step. I mentioned before about the difference between some of the different keyword phrases that exist. For instance, if someone types in something about how to fix a toilet, that person's probably looking for an instruction on how to do that, not necessarily looking for a plumber. But if they put in like plumber and then the city name, or where to find the plumber or who's the best plumber, he's looking for a plumber. He's trying to find someone he can and buy their services or get them to help him, versus the guy who's just looking for the do-it-yourself kind of thing. So it's very important to know what your target keywords are from a buying versus a research perspective. But it's also important to know that if the keyword's a buying keyword, it also has reasonable volume for what you're trying to or search audience you're trying to have come look at your website. And that's where I put choose your battles. And what that basically means is choose your battles between maybe a crazy competitive keyword versus 5 other ones that are not so competitive and that we can win for quicker, that if you add them all together, they kind of equal that big one. So it's real important to choose the right mix and blend of what you're looking for, so you can win in an effective amount of time frame to get the results and the success from SEO, versus saying, I want to rank for this incredibly tough keyword. Let's say like the term financial planning or financial planner, just by itself is an incredibly difficult term to rank for, because there's so many out there and so many people doing so much work on those terms. But if you went into like a niche, financial planning for uh, divorced mothers, or something like that, now that is maybe a search term that people are searching on in a much less volume, but it's much more niche. So if we're going to get a larger number of a small pond versus none of a larger pond, as you can see, obviously that's a big difference and makes a whole lot more sense. So that's kind of the idea behind choosing the right keywords and the right mix. And obviously we have the tools that can go help do that. And there's tools available free across the internet. Do searches for Google's keyword tool and things like that, and you can find ways to look at the search volumes and do that. Don't spread yourself too thin. And what this basically means is, when it comes to keywords, focus on pages on specific phrases and stay with those phrases. Don't clutter one page with way too many keywords or way too many secondary keywords. Choose a primary and then maybe 1 or 2 secondary keywords that this page is about, and have the content, the images, and whatever else you have on their video match what that page is for. When it comes to your homepage, that's a little different. Homepages typically have some sort of generic blend of kind of what the entire site's about, and that's okay. But the secondary, or we call it sometimes deep linking, the secondary pages need to be very focused on specific things. Don't put too many things out there, because it will confuse the search engines. They have robots that crawl sites on a constant basis, and you want to make sure that when they come out to crawl a page, their robot actually knows exactly what this page is about, and it can very easily categorize that, so when they put it into the search, they know when someone searches on a term that fits that page, they'll find it. So really important to do these 3 things for keyword research. Number 2, this one could be kind of the 1 and 2 or 2 and 1, as I just talked about. Content is king, and it really is king these days. As I mentioned before, the old tactics of the past of stuffing keywords and even changing the color so they don't all show up and they're just on the page. Google's way too smart for all of that now. They've gotten way past that, and what they're trying to do now, and rightfully so, they're trying to give their searcher the richest experience that they can Meaning when someone types in a term, they want to give them options that they think are the best sites that's going to answer their question in the least amount of clicks. If someone has to keep searching and keep clicking and keep getting a bunch of junk sites that aren't related to the term they're after, that's not going to be any good for the searcher. So Google's always tweaking and constantly working with their algorithms to give that searcher a more appropriate opportunity to find what they're looking for. So what you do, of course, you feed the search engines the content that represents what you're trying to convey on your website or your product or services. Um, so it's really important that when you, like I said, when you put on certain pages, if you're going to target a specific keyword or two or three, content matches that. So what you have is what I call sometimes page alignment. And what page alignment means, if you look back to the left, like I mentioned a minute ago, the SEO on-page primer, those 10 different steps that are in there that you can on-page optimize towards, those are what's creating page alignment. If you do all those things, you don't have to do them all. You don't have to do every one exact number, but you can do pieces and parts. But if you do a majority in general, you're going to get a well-optimized aligned page. You don't want to over-optimize. Google is even kind of penalizing sometimes for over-optimization, meaning if you do too much of exactly the same thing on every page, it kind of looks the same. Vary some of your tactics, vary some of the things you do, vary some of the volume, sizes of a number of words, and all those different things. Again, just to mix it up to give the viewer, something a little bit different that they're looking for. But the key is, Google does, as you add more content, you tell the robots from Google, the robots are something that are basically electronic that come and just crawl sites constantly and basically reading them for what they are. So if you give Google new content, fresh content on a kind of a consistent basis, the robot A will crawl more often, but B, they'll know exactly what they're crawling and what it looks like, so they can report back to this, the big search engine. Hey, I know exactly what this page is about. It appears to be about this, this, and this, and it's a number of people now have linked to this, and we'll talk about linking in just a minute. But it's building authority around that content. So um, it's really important that basically we keep that fresh, unique content. And I always say use the 3E principle when you're creating content. It needs to be either educational, enlightening, or maybe even entertaining. So something that's going to be relevant, but also be something that someone's going to want to engage with or read at least part of. So number three kind of falls into that category, saying don't worry about keywords, just keep things relevant. And I say most of the time. Basically, what we're trying to basically say here is, again, don't unnaturally write something where it looks like you're putting keywords in random places and it doesn't read in good proper English and that sort of thing. Um, Write it like you're having a conversation. But if you write it about the topic or the phrase you're going after, those words will naturally show up in there and naturally fall in there. Now you can kind of, like I said, you can kind of squeeze them in there to make sure that they do show up and show up in certain areas of the page, the first part of the page, the last part of the page, a few times sprinkled in, and that sort of thing. So there is some things you can do to help kind of enforce the keyword or the keyword phrase you're trying to promote, but at the same time make sure it reads well, it doesn't compromise the content or the intent, or as I put here, naturally include your keywords in the content. Make sure it always reads well and the English as well, no matter what it is that you do. Because we are, as always, remember, we're always trying to serve the viewer and give them something that's of value to them for their search, because they're actually looking for something. Let's give them what they're looking for, so people won't bounce off of our site. And I'll talk about bounce in a second. That's right. Social media, we all know about it, but the lines between SEO and social media continue to be blurred. Says a community manager at SEO Mods. SEO Mods is a big SEO firm that does a lot of research and watching of the internet, and what we call social signals now is what we're calling them, are basically the social sites. All the different channels that exist out there. Obviously, the big boys are Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, even Pinterest now is actually past LinkedIn in amount of time spent and number of actions per day. But these are the sites that Google pays attention to. They're watching to see what people are talking about. Are there conversations? Are people linking? And are people sharing? And are liking? And all the different things that happen in the social world. It's important because Google is paying attention. So it's not all just about straight SEO anymore. It's about, okay, Am I SEO'd? Yes. Do I have good content? Yes. But at the same time, are people socializing about it? Is the community talking about it or sharing again and sharing or liking? They'll take notice of that. Are there videos on a YouTube channel? All those different areas that are becoming more and more important to us happen every day. Um, so adding buttons, sharing buttons to your website to promote sharing, everybody's pretty much doing this, but make sure you do. Make sure that you give someone an option if they really like your content or think it's valuable or think it's worth sharing. They can hit the like button. They can hit the, they can pin it if it's a picture. They can pin that picture on one of their Pinterest boards. They can, tweet or retweet that information as it comes across. So giving people an easy option to be social with your content is really important. So make sure you have social media presence on your web properties that allow people to share that information freely and easily. Really important. This is just kind of a showing of that. That now, if you look up here on a typical Google page, they may show across the top it says 50 personal results, and that's basically Google Plus's area. Google Plus now is in these business circles or these friend or family circles and things. You get to see what other people maybe have liked on for that search. So if someone did that search and there's a whole bunch of people, Google's going to tell you about it. So it's an instant authority potentially with that. And then I've got see where there's got the little man there. It shows that people, and on the green arrow, it shows where basically you can drop down and see, who liked it or who in your circle and who in your Google Plus and all the different things that happen there. But again, it's back to social signals. And Google Plus is something that's becoming um, sort of Google's Facebook a little bit, in that they can become circles or friends or followers or sharing and kind of liking, in a sense, certain things you can do there. Not quite the same, but it is something that they're trying to capture, that social sharing of information. So it's really important that we start paying attention, obviously, to social signals. And Google Plus is something that will be obviously very important going forward. Um, this says get links from other high value sites, and some people might say, I'm not sure what a link is, but basically what that is somewhere else out on the internet, on someone else's website, referenced in an article or a press release, or there's a video that has that in its description, but it's pointing back to your website. Um, and that's basically called a backlink, or just a link, or hypertext link, or some different terms you probably heard. But they're all important, that they kind of add up as a vote. Every time someone links back to your site, they're kind of saying, you know what, I'm voting for this site. It's important. I'm going to link to it because I think it's the right content for what I'm talking about, or something like that. So all links are good, and all links are vote. But some votes matter more than others. And what I mean by that is that because of some sites carry so much page authority or page rank, or they have so much volume, if that site links back to you, Google will give you a little bit more credibility or more, link juice, so to speak, from that one link than maybe 100 others. And for instance, if like a very popular site, can you hear me? If you could just type yes in the box. My internet connection looks like it just burped a little, but I am back. Okay, thank you. Good. Everybody can hear me again. Sorry about that, but technology, I guess, is what it is. Okay, so continuing on, basically, as I mentioned, these links that we create on there. Hello? Uh, Having some audio issues. Hello? Sorry about that. I'm having some audio issues. I'm not sure why, but we'll start again here. Continuing on. The votes that we're talking about from a link perspective are have different values. If there's a very obscure site that's something in your industry potentially, but just doesn't have much page authority, but someone linked back to you, still important, still a good vote, but it's not the same as some of the larger page authority sites. So I won't keep lingering on that. I know my audience has been checking in and out during this piece, but the bottom line, more links equals good. The more links, the better. It doesn't matter if it's just a bookmark or other things. They all do count, but some are more important than others. But the way to do this is create good content, valuable content that people want to share, link, bookmark, all the different things they want to do. You want to make sure that they're doing that. We call it kind of like link bait or link juice in a sense, where someone says, boy, that's great content, I'll share that. And the more, the higher the page authority sites that pick it up, the better we do. So it'll be picked up in that respect. Um, Video obviously goes without saying. Google loves video. They bought YouTube, so they're a little invested in this thing. But the good thing about video is it can rank just like your website can. You can create a YouTube channel, create small snippets. They can be testimonials of your customers. They can be how-tos in certain things in your services or your products. All the things that you can do, optimize them in your channel. Make sure you put your website link in the description. Make sure you add a keyword or two in the tags and that sort of thing, so you have it where people can search for it or find it. And YouTube happens to be the #2 search engine out there. They get more searches than Yahoo and Bing, so it's really important that video works. And you can also embed those videos then on your website in video areas or on different parts of your pages and that sort of thing. So important to use video, set it up, embed it, and again, use your keywords in the video title, that sort of thing, and make sure you have your link or your domain, name, yourwebsite.com, always in the description so people can find their way back to it. So don't ignore video as a true piece of content. It's not just about writing on your page anymore. It's spreading it around. Which kind of takes us to the next segue, is obviously channels. Channels are very important. And what we mean by channels is the major authority sites. I mentioned YouTube a minute ago, but other ones. I mean, obviously, anybody who gets a ton of traffic, Amazon, Craigslist, Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, all these things, can be considered channels because we can post things there. We can post things on there, whether it's content, it's video, it's code, it's sharing PDFs, it's ebooks, it's learning tools, whatever they do. All these different things can rank, and you've seen them when you go to Google and do searches on specific terms. What you're going to see sometimes is video showing up, or an Amazon something for sale in the search in that first page in those first few spots. And so it's very important that you end up showing up in these different channels. And what this kind of points to is what we call sometimes link diversity. And what link diversity is, we talked about a link before, is it's anything that's kind of out on the internet pointing back to your site. And again, that can be one of these. It can be a YouTube video, and it can be something, Amazon. You can post your own products. If you created an ebook on something, you can post it where you sell it. You can give it away. You can post it for 99 cents, whatever that is. But it can actually rank and get you more hits to your website because of that. So It is important, and like I said, Pinterest and things, you can set up boards. I did a Pinterest for Business, kind of a 101 webinar a couple of weeks ago. You go to my website on zimrock.com and you can find that replay as well, and you might find that as a good kind of first step to understand how Pinterest might be able to work for your business. But things like that, you don't ignore these authority major channels. So get your content on them; they will rank, meaning those things, that these artifacts will actually rank on the websites. This is just obviously a demonstration of that. Here's searching how to lose weight fast. I mean, Amazon, a product, is showing up on page 1 in the first couple of things. This is number 5 on here. So it's very valuable. It works, and the more things we have that could potentially show up on a specific Google search, the better off we're going to be. And then lastly on the 7 is if you are local, especially if you're a brick and mortar or have some sort of retail, optimize for local. Do not ignore it. It's huge. You see the Google pages now, and you see, if you typed in, let's use plumber again, plumber, and you use a specific city, plumber Los Angeles, plumber Boston, whatever that is, you're going to see a map show up, probably usually 7 pins. We call it the 7-pack sometimes, with the map off to the top right. But they'll blend those sometimes with their organic search as well. So you'll get your website and your Google Places listing all in one line. And Google really likes that because it maximizes the page, but gets you kind of front and center. So obviously, the further near the top of those pins you are, the better you can be. And there's a lot of different social signals there too, like reviews and stars sometimes, and things that we can help optimize towards to make your places or your map listing even stand out even further. So again, when it comes to optimizing, look at using again your keyword and keyword phrases throughout the site. Make sure your local address and phone number are the same, exactly the same for any directory you use. Meaning, if you add things to Yelp or Manta or Merchant Circle or any of these other directories that you might add yourself to, make sure that the address, all the way down to the spacing, capitalization, everything is exactly the same. Because Google will look at those other directories. Sometimes they call them citations. These different citations across the internet, and if they do match up perfectly, phone numbers are the same, with parentheses or without, everything exactly the same, you will get a lot of extra credibility in your map because you are listed in a lot of different local directories and potentially getting local reviews and things like that. They'll even pick up reviews from other social sites, Google will, and put them on your Google Places page if people click on it. So again, get listed in these directories, but make sure you use the exact same way. Create videos, local videos. Again, what I mean by local is something about your service or your area or why it's important to your community what you do. And then when you post these, embed them on your site. Put them on your YouTube channel, but embed them on your Maps or Places page. Name them appropriately, keywords and things like that, so you can get more benefit from the videos themselves that are just in one spot. Local organizations and businesses, get links from them, meaning if people have, obviously Chamber of Commerce's and all these different opportunities that are local that you can go out and maybe join or post or get something on their site, get yourself out as many places as you can, what we call link diversity before. So it's real important to keep pushing that. I'm going to try to pick up the pace here a little bit. I got several more slides, and I'm a little behind on time. So I threw a couple of kind of bonus. I said the top 7, but I'll throw a couple of extra ones in here. I mentioned content before. This just reinforces that point. When you create content, create it for people, again, not for search engines. It's really important because the search engines now are becoming very hyper sensitive to that content and much more intelligent about reading that content. They can actually watch a video, and even if you're talking inside the video, they can start to interpret what the talking says. So it's even gone to the next level. So it's really important that you're speaking to an audience, and your audience just like you were sitting there talking to them face to face. It's really important because it'll be received better. Your audience will like it better, and they'll probably relate with you even better. And that's why the last one says make it personal, share your story. It's really important to have them relate to you on a specific level and how you can help them. Most people buy things for probably one of two reasons. A, it solves a pain, or B, it creates some sort of efficiency or gain. So you're going to relate to them in some level that helps them understand how you can help them in one of these two areas. So it's typically emotional when people make purchases that are outside the norm besides just buying gas for your car. It's something, even though they do it as well with emotion sometimes. But the reality is that again, make content for people. Make sure they understand what it is. And then I've mentioned this before as well. Be consistent. SEO is the the journey, the marathon. It's not a sprint. When you start to create content or do content, create a schedule that you can actually stick with. I've seen people get really energized. Create 5 blogs or do 2 videos and then don't do anything for 3 months. It's better to create all that stuff if you want it once, but don't put it all up at once. Space it out. If you're going to do something twice a month, do it twice a month, but stay consistent because you will condition an audience, towards that. So make sure people look for things. So when it comes down to examples of like local search and things, make it very easy for them to find you. In this case, we're talking about like phone numbers, what we might call a call to action. So when you're looking at someone's website or even their listing potentially, especially when it's local, you may rank in the top side of the maps. You can see the pin section over here on the top right, but the phone number will be right there, and it will be picked up, so people can actually search on your phone number. But in this case, you can see 2 things too that they're different. They used a 1-212 in this one, and then you have the parentheses, and there's no space between the top one there on the website. It's real important to, again, be consistent, because when people search, they can actually search on a phone number, and phone numbers can actually come up. So make sure that these are always the same. So you might get extra link authority and Google authority when they can see you in a lot more places. It will show up, for that. So be consistent. Make sure you're always using the same exact way to do it and the same terms potentially. If it's locksmith, like this locksmith New York City or NYC or the things that you do, you want to make sure that it's consistent and it does match what your business is and how they do that. Excuse me, I'm going to grab a quick drink here. Okay, when you look at it says like Rhode Island plumbing here. This term that grabbed the number 1 spot. They were very consistent in their message. What they supply, the residential. They use their phone number the same way. Everything was consistent and fundamental about their web page, their specific ads, or whatever they're using to combine together to create that one broader view of the I guess of their authority or of what they're trying to represent. If they're representing a specific product or specific service, the consistency across the multiple or diverse channels is really the point of this. You have to use good fundamentals when trying to do that. So we can go into more examples of that as you have questions. So let's jump to the questions real quick. We've got a couple minutes left. I've thrown a couple in here that we can talk about that people have kind of asked ahead of time, so we'll talk about that. Is SEO a good marketing strategy for my particular business? The typical answer is yes, but it also all depends on what you're doing. Some folks have said, I won't get business from the internet. I just want to be, I need a location. I need like an online brochure or some sort of place to put certain information that I can point people to. And that may be true, and that's good. You should have that. You should have your website is always kind of your front door. When people go or meet somebody or they get their business card, the first thing they typically do is go to their website. How does it look? Does it have the information? Do they do the right thing? So it is your kind of your first impression. But even though you say you don't want really search traffic for it or that sort of thing. You'd be surprised sometimes how many different searches are happening out there for specific things, and it all depends on how you want to compete, because there are typically people searching for most everything that does occur out there, and even if it's research, it might be a branding situation, so you can get more brand by just showing up and having that authority. So There's no one really clear-cut answer to this question, but the reality is it's typically yes, because it can vary and it's still all important. It's not necessarily all has to be about business, but it can be about other things as well. How much time will I need to spend each week on SEO? Again, this depends again on your situation. How competitive are the terms you're trying to go after? How consistent do you want to be with your content and the things with your community or audience? So probably what's more important here is the appropriate amount of time that you spend on SEO is it has to be equal to what you're trying to accomplish goal-wise, and then what the competition is for that, how much it's going to take to achieve your goals. And then number two, whatever you decide, to stay consistent with it over time. So once you decide basically here's what it's going to probably take to get us there, make sure we can commit to doing that over time on a consistent basis. Okay, but basically, how can I avoid common mistakes that businesses make with SEO? Just basically using consistent, again, I'll use the term white hat tactics on a consistent basis. The things that you can do wrong is using some subpar standard tactics, trying to buy links or share links, or sometimes you've heard people say, oh, reciprocal links. I'll put a link to your site on mine, and vice versa. That doesn't really work anymore because basically they cancel each other out. Google, again, got smart enough and sniffed out all these different things that people tried. And I still get a lot of emails, people saying, I'll post your link on my site if you'll post mine on yours. And it's pointless. So because it just doesn't work. So avoid old tactics, avoid keyword stuffing, avoid inconsistency. Again, use methods that are going to feed an audience with real content, real material that they're actually searching for that can help them with whatever they're trying to find, and then do it on a consistent basis. How important is keyword research? Very. As you saw in my top 7, it was basically number 1. You need to understand you need to understand your industry. You need to understand your prospect, kind of their profile, what they might be searching on, and more importantly, where they might be searching. Where do they exist on the internet? And the keywords are going to point us to that. They're going to help us understand where they are and how to best put something together, a campaign or your own internal work on how to target those specific keywords, and that keyword searcher is most important. So keywords research is truly one of the top things that you need to do. And it's like I said, it's become very sophisticated, and it's very important to choose the right keywords so you can get the success you're after. How important is link building? This is kind of what we call the off page, as I mentioned before. Incredibly important. But again, all links aren't created equal. You want to make sure you're doing link Can you hear me? Okay. I think might be my internet is cutting out here. I'm trying to find I had to restart the presentation here. Link building I mentioned before. It's the diversity and the consistency of link building that's really important here. Obviously, when you create good content, it will naturally pick up links, social bookmarks, potentially get shared, likes, Facebook, all the different things that you can do. So it is incredibly important. It is really the thing that's going to rank you higher, faster, and probably more consistently, and maybe more sticky, as I mentioned before, than anything else. The on-page optimization is very important to have your page aligned, like I mentioned, but actually link building or off-site or off-page linking is incredibly important, and it is what will work the most towards uh, page rank in general. Obviously, should I hire an SEO consultant to do all the stuff for me? Um, the answer is maybe. If you've got resources, if you've got internal time, energy, and effort, there's a lot of things that are available on the internet that you can do research for and find out how to specifically do a lot of the things I mentioned here today. So again, very important to be consistent and do the things that you need to do, and you can do it yourself or your team can do it, but you can go outside if you just don't have the time and energy or the specific skills to do that. So if you do a redesign, if you start something from scratch, or even if you just, I shouldn't say from scratch, if you're starting from scratch or even do a redesign of your website, when should you start thinking about SEO? And the answer is right away, up front. Almost before you even start building the website, because when you start building a website, you want to make sure it's structured properly for SEO, optimized properly as you build the pages. So it's really important that you've almost done the research up front before you even start building or redesigning, so you can be ready for when you start to do some content which builds links and link building, that it will be effective with your website because it will be completely aligned. What sort of things will get you in trouble with the search engines? As I mentioned before, if you use, there's a lot of things out there. You can buy links from these big blog farms or link farms. Google's been coming down very hard on these things. So basically, just in general, buying links or buying things from people on the internet is typically just not the right way to build a link. The other things I mentioned is not doing something naturally. Don't keyword stuff a page or try to fool Google in some fashion or form. That they won't see or won't understand what the page is about, or won't give you the credit for it because it is formatted incorrectly or things like that. So back to kind of my top 7 things. If you do those, create good content, do your research, get good authority, be in all the channels, build a diversity. If you do it all those things that way, you'll stay out of trouble with the search engines. This is certainly a tough one, but the bottom line is if you do hire someone, and how can you be sure they won't use things that could get you potentially in trouble? Ask them. I mean, ask them, tell me exactly, the kind of things you do to rank for me, to get me rank or get me page authority. What do you do? And if they're, building, creating content and, getting the content syndicated in the right channels, press releases or articles, or where you're going to get different links or build YouTube videos and channels and do those sorts of things, you're going to be okay if they've got the right answer about how they do it, and more importantly, probably if they're transparent about what they do and willing to kind of share exactly what they do, you're probably in good shape. What's great about Google is they're there to help. How can I improve my rank? Ask them. And there's tools out there like Google Webmaster Tools, Google Analytics, as I mentioned earlier. They'll tell you exactly what's going on with your website. If there's crawl errors, if there's issues, it'll tell you what keywords people are going to your sites with. Analytics will. You'll be able to see exactly what content's being read, how long it's being read. If people are bouncing off your site, meaning they come to your site, but they don't even check another page, they're on there 5 seconds and they go somewhere else, that means that the search term or the content was wrong, or some reason you didn't give them a reason to stay on your site. So it's important just to pay attention to all those different tools and analytics that are available to you, especially from Google. So kind of in closing, basically, SEO is not a slam dunk. It is something that does take time. Can be fairly complex. There is content that needs to be created, and it's best created by you or in conjunction with you, because you know your business and your service better than anybody else. It can be also very personal, so you want to make sure you do that. Establishing, who the competition is. When you start to break in, understand who they are, what they've done, what it's going to take to compete with them. Back to kind of the link building thing. It can be laborious and slow, but if you do it right and do it over time, it will achieve the results you're after, and have the longevity you're after. And if you want to go outside, find somebody you can trust. Make sure you're working with someone that's certainly got the understanding and maybe the time in the field to make it worth. So bottom line, is it worth it? Yeah, sure it is. There's so much search going on, especially when it comes to if someone's trying to again get audiences from the search engines, whether it's products or services or things like that. There are people searching out there for what you're doing. Are you getting in front of them? It's the beauty of the website is it never sleeps. The internet's constantly working, search is constantly working, your website's constantly working. So if you get a well-ranked site, and it can be an extra salesperson or your entire sales team nonstop around the clock. So it can be invaluable. There was a survey that said basically if you had put all your marketing time and budget into one channel, what would it be? This was done, and basically the answer was SEO. Um, it, People considered it, especially the SMB, which is a small to medium business market, basically said this is the number one thing that generated them, potentially income through new prospects, new customers, broadening their sales funnel, and of course just expanding their message and their authority and their reach. The, the beauty again of SEO is that if you feed your audience right, you'll be rewarded not only just in search, but it will trickle into now what is the social world with the sharing and liking and all the different things that happen there. So it is absolutely it. I've run a couple of minutes long here. I apologize. I know I had a few audio glitches as well, and I apologize for that as well. But I appreciate your attendance. If you want to throw a question into the moderator or the chat box lower left, I can probably take one or two real quick before we turn you loose. There's a question here about just link building in general. Again, the types of links that that can be created naturally is when you do put good content out there, and maybe it's something you're going to share. It might be a do-it-yourself manual or a guide or something like that. If that gets picked up and then shared around, each one of those places where it gets shared will be considered a link, because this can be that document or something will have a URL or your domain name pointing back to your website. Same thing as if someone goes to your site and bookmarks it. If they're using an online bookmarking service, especially like Xmarks or Delicious or one of these services, the search engines know that. They pick up and see that people are bookmarking people online. Stumble upon, if someone says they like your website and they click the stumble upon, meaning that they've kind of given it a vote. All those signals are creating links out on the internet. Every time someone likes a page, a Facebook page, it's known by the search engines. So all these different link diversity areas and things that you can do are going to be links. So it's not that you have to go. I guess the question really is do I go create a link? And the answer is you don't really create the link yourself. You create the tool or the artifact, the collateral, the content, whatever that is, that's going to be picked up, shared, and when it's shared across the internet, all those things become links. When you put a video on YouTube, that channel, that becomes a link. So it's basically just doing all the things that create the right content. They will become links on their own. And if things go viral, obviously the more links you get, that much faster. Yeah, on-page SEO, is it as important as link building? Of course, they're very different, but they actually kind of work together. When someone's pointing to a website with a specific keyword, if it's not just your domain, maybe it's a hypertext or hyperlinked word. Sometimes you see on the internet, you'll see a word that's got an underline on it, and if you clicked on it, it would take you somewhere else. If that keyword term matches exactly with your specific on-page SEO that you did for that key phrase, Google's going to see that, give you much more credibility and authority for that link, because it does give the searcher, again, what they're looking for. So yes, on-page and off-page are probably equally important, only when they're lined up together. So make sure you always do it together. If there's one more, I'll take one more question. I know we've gone to run a little long here. People say that Facebook is taking off. Is Facebook always what you have to use? The answer is maybe, maybe not. Facebook is definitely one of those social tools it's like a community. So if you have something that people would actually want to have a conversation about, or have some passion, if you're a retail outlet, Absolutely, because it is something that's going to be local. People are going to shop and share, and whether it's a restaurant or a haircut or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Those are kind of the musts because people will have referrals almost for their good experiences that they have. I mean, if you were if you're a business that builds a jet engine part, you probably Facebook's not going to be quite as important for that because there's not probably a community out there talking about that. So you kind of pick your battles, and I think I mentioned that earlier. Is that when it comes to keywords as well as social, you kind of choose your battles. Which ones are going to give you the best bang for the buck? Because you don't have to do them all. You want to do the best ones. So back to kind of the research, the foundation, understand your prospect, understand your industry, understand where that audience might be on the internet, and find the best strategy to get in front of them so they can find you when they're looking for you. That's really kind of the whole to use the word secret is probably, that's just the rules of the internet. That's the way it works for you. So when you're doing SEO, give yourself the best chance to be found when that person's looking for you. Probably a great way to close on that note, because that's what it's all about, is that finding that inbound or that warm, permissive based lead. So I will close with that. I thank you all for your attendance. I know, again, apologize for ran a little long today, but this replay will be up probably in the next day or so on the site. And I encourage you to look at next week. We'll have another session. And with that, I'll close. Thank you again.